Welcome to Fairy Tales Dashed 1.
Hello, little dreamers, and welcome back to our cozy corner of imagination. Are you ready for a brand new adventure? The story I have for you today is called Barnaby and the Sky-Rooted Seed. Barnaby Buttercup wasn't your average 10-year-old. He lived in the village of Whispering Willows, a place where cobblestone paths wound past houses with thatched roofs and gardens overflowed with flowers that hummed gentle melodies. But Barnaby was a boy who often felt a little bit out of sync with the world. While other children chased butterflies and played hide-and-seek in the sun-dappled woods, Barnaby found himself more fascinated by the shadows that stretched and danced and the quiet hum of the earth beneath his feet. He was a boy who saw the world in shades of twilight and whispered secrets to the roots of ancient trees. One blustery autumn afternoon, Barnaby was exploring the old forgotten part of the Whispering Woods, the part where the trees grew so thick their branches intertwined, creating a perpetual canopy of emerald and gold. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just enjoying the crisp air and the rustle of fallen leaves. That's when he stumbled upon a small gnarled oak tree older and more twisted than any he had ever seen. Its bark was like wrinkled parchment, and its roots, instead of burrowing into the ground, seemed to weave upwards, reaching towards the sky. Intrigued, Barnaby knelt down, tracing the strange upward spiraling roots with his finger. As he did, a single iridescent seed, no bigger than his thumbnail, detached itself from the bark and tumbled into his outstretched palm. It pulsed with a faint inner light like a captured firefly. He pocketed the seed, feeling a peculiar warmth spread through his hand. Back in his small, cluttered bedroom with its walls lined with shelves of curious rocks and dried herbs, Barnaby examined the seed. It was unlike anything he'd ever encountered. It shimmered with all the colors of a rainbow, and when he held it to his ear, he could hear a faint whispered song, a melody that seemed to be sung by the very stars. He felt an irresistible urge to plant it. But where? The ground outside was already growing hard with the coming winter. Barnaby's gaze fell upon his reflection in the polished surface of his wooden desk. It was him, of course, but somehow less substantial. A fleeting thought born of his usual introspection flitted through his mind. What if he could trade something of himself for this magical seed? Not his actual self, of course, but perhaps the fleeting, insubstantial thing that looked back at him from mirrors. He held the seed up to his reflection. "I'll trade you," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "for a bit of your magic." He closed his eyes, a strange sort of pact forming in his mind. When he opened them, the seed in his hand pulsed brighter, and his reflection seemed to shimmer, to thin out, as if a breath of air had passed through it. He felt a subtle shift within himself, a lightness he couldn't quite explain. The seed, however, felt heavier, more potent. Barnaby then did something truly peculiar. He found an empty jam jar, filled it with some of his finest potting soil, and carefully placed the iridescent seed inside. But instead of burying it, he held the jar upside down, so the seed was at the bottom, pointing towards the ceiling. He felt a whisper of intuition telling him this was the right way. He then placed the upside-down jar on his windowsill, the opening facing the sky. He waited and waited. Days turned into a week. Barnaby watched the jar intently. Nothing seemed to happen. He started to doubt his strange decision. Had he imagined the seed's magic? Had he traded something important for a mere pebble? Then one crisp morning, as the first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of rose and gold, Barnaby gasped. From the very bottom of the jam jar, where the seed lay, a tiny luminous tendril was emerging. But it wasn't growing up towards the light as any normal sprout would. No, this tendril was growing downwards, pushing through the soil, through the glass of the jar, and extending towards the floor. It was a skyroot, a root that grew from the sky, or at least from something in the sky. Barnaby's heart pounded with excitement. He carefully removed the jar from the windowsill, placing it on the floor. The skyroot, a thread of pure silver light, continued its descent, weaving its way through the wooden floorboards. It didn't break them. It simply phased through them, as if the wood were made of mist. The root grew longer, thinner, and brighter, a luminous pathway descending into the unseen depths beneath his house. Over the next few days, Barnaby watched mesmerized as the skyroot continued to grow. It snaked through the floor, through the foundations, and burrowed downwards into the very heart of the earth. It glowed with a soft, steady light illuminating its path. He felt a connection to it, a strange kinship. It was as if a part of him, the part that had once resided in his fleeting reflection, was now tethered to this downward-growing marvel. The skyroot didn't seem to need sunlight or water. Its sustenance, Barnaby suspected, came from somewhere else entirely. As it grew, Barnaby began to notice changes. He found he could understand the hushed conversations of the earthworms tunneling beneath his garden. He could feel the slow, patient pulse of the ancient stones that formed the village walls. He could even sense the dreams of the sleeping trees in the whispering woods. His senses had sharpened his connection to the world beneath his feet, deepening with every inch the skyroot descended. One evening, the skyroot reached a new milestone. It had burrowed so far down that it was no longer visible from his room, yet Barnaby could still feel its presence, a gentle tugging sensation in his chest. He decided he had to follow. He couldn't go down himself, of course, but he wondered what the root was reaching. He spent hours poring over the old books in the village library, searching for any mention of skyroots or downward-growing plants. He found tales of ancient beings who communicated with the Earth's core and legends of seeds that blossomed in the darkness. Nothing quite matched his skyroot, but he felt he was getting closer. Then a curious thing happened. One morning, Barnaby woke up to find a small, intricately carved wooden box sitting on his bedside table. He hadn't put it there. He opened it, and inside, nestled on a bed of soft moss,
See you again, and do like, share, and subscribe the channel, Fairy Tales!